Our first story of the night is a huge win. During COVID, we really saw a rise in debanking individuals for their opinions, political stances, or dissidents. This targeting of people has become so widespread, and it is a serious concern for the future, especially with AI coming. I can speak to this personally, having been debanked for my journalism. I was notified via an email that I had 7 days to move my funds and would never be able to bank with my bank again. And to make matters worse, the story which seemed to tie to my personal debanking was a report I did on something published on a government website. Publicly available information, just something they didn't want attention drawn to, it seems. Well, following this, my producer was then approached by his bank via a text message with a threat of shutting down his account unless he went in to re-verify himself after having that specific account for about 30 years. Needless to say, this is the story of many people who go up against the status quo. We've seen numerous accounts of this taking place all over the world, including protesters at the Canada Truckers Convoy, J6 people. But even unexplained debanking of individuals who aren't vocal, but share the beliefs of those who are. Well, this in from the Gateway Pundit today. Finally, President Trump is set to sign an executive order to crack down on woke banks targeting conservatives. President Trump's White House is preparing to unleash a powerful executive order targeting banks that have waged quiet war against conservatives, Christians, and cryptocurrency companies. The Wall Street Journal reports that the Trump admin is preparing to fine and investigate financial institutions that discriminate against customers based on political or religious beliefs. The executive order, currently in draft form, could be signed as soon as this week. This is a direct strike against the woke banking cartel, which has long operated with impunity while silencing and debanking Americans who dare to defy the radical left's agenda. According to the draft reviewed by the Journal, the order will empower regulators to enforce the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, antitrust laws, and consumer protection statutes against financial institutions that shut down accounts for political reasons. The penalties could include hefty fines, consent decrees, or other disciplinary action. Violators will be named and shamed. Earlier this year, President Donald Trump stunned the room into silence at the World Economic Forum summit when he publicly confronted Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan over political bias against conservatives. Trump called out the banking giant, accusing it of denying services to conservatives. And by the way, Trump said, pointing directly at Moynihan, speaking of you, and you've done a fantastic job, but I hope you start opening your bank to conservatives. Many conservatives complained that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservatives' business, and I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what, but you and Jamie Dimon and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives because what you're doing is wrong. Republican Rep. James Comer was on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo and discussed President Trump calling out banks for discriminating against conservative clients. Are you investigating whether or not US banks are debanking conservatives? Bartiromo asked. Yes, we are. We've heard numerous instances of conservatives being debanked, and what we want to know is this a process of the bank's ESG policy, or is this our government stepping in like what we found with Twitter and Facebook, where the government stepped in and said that they wanted certain conservatives deplatformed and censored, Comer said. We want to know again, is this the government involvement in another dirty trick by the Joe Biden administration, or is this just bad liberal policy that discriminates against conservatives by the bank, Comer continued. Well, in 2021, the Gateway Pundit reported that Bank of America searched through customers' data and transaction records and provided these data to the FBI following the Capitol riot. The country's second largest bank gave data and information to the feds at the request of the US government without the knowledge or the consent of the customers. Bank of America scanned through customer records to flag the following. Were they in DC between January 5th and 6th? Purchased a hotel stay at Airbnb or Airbnb in DC, Virginia, or Maryland after Jan 6, airline-related purchases since Jan 6, any purchases of weapons between January 7 and their upcoming suspected stay in the DC area around Inauguration Day. Trump officials have long warned that the left weaponizes every lever of government and corporate power against political dissenters, and woke banks were no exception. Conservatives and crypto innovators alike were targeted, frozen out, and smeared, all under the guise of compliance and reputational risk. But the Trump White House isn't backing down. The draft order goes further, instructing bank regulators to eliminate internal policies that facilitated debanking based on political or ideological factors. It also directs the Small Business Administration to investigate banks that issue SBA-backed loans. Perhaps most significantly, the order calls for banks violating these laws to be referred directly to the Justice Department. Now, we have yet to see what other provisions are in the executive order. We wanted to make you aware of what Australian banks are doing. This is something we became aware of recently. This is Bankwest in Australia talking about behavioural security. They say that behavioural security technology learns over time how you interact with their app and online banking to help us detect unusual activity and potential fraud attempts. They say that the behavioural information that they're going to be collecting is the way that you interact with your device when using the app and online banking, like how you typically type, scroll, click, and swipe. Why do they need this information? Well, we use behavioral information to develop the behavioral security technology as part of our fraud and scam prevention toolkit. Collecting this information can help us distinguish between genuine users like you and potential fraudsters. So basically, they're going to surveil people's behavior, how they scroll, collecting all of this information about their behavioral patterns. Innocent people who have nothing to hide, genuine users like you, for the sake of some fraudsters. It's always the case, isn't it? Genuine people being punished and surveilled and having the thumb of big banks and big tech and big government over their lives for the sake of a few who do the wrong thing. It goes on to say that how does collecting my behavioral information help protect me from scams and fraud? Well, they say that we all have unique ways of interacting with our devices, including how we type, scroll, click, and swipe, and changes to these interactions could be a sign that your accounts are being compromised or that someone else is using your device. And most people read this and think, oh yeah, that sounds reasonable. They don't think of the surveillance aspect. But listen to this. It says, what if I don't agree to my behavioral information being collected? Behavioral information will be collected while the app and online banking are being used. If you don't agree to this information being collected, we can't provide access to the app or online banking. Now, we show you that because banks are clearly ramping up their surveillance, AI tools, tracking and tracing, despite no active, apparent, explicit demands from the government or the people, who never asked for this, by the way. And of course, this is a worldwide agenda, the agenda of the World Bank and IMF, in fact. Yet again, big banks and corporations are implementing systems and processes that nobody ever asked for or wants. Every time a bank or one of these corporations has a breach or a hack, it seems the only way to fix it is to tyrannize us. So it'll be interesting to see what this executive order entails and whether it protects from things like we just showed you, but nonetheless, it appears some protections are coming. Let's just hope it's not more hoops to jump through for the people and another excuse for the banks to implement more overreach on the people's money.